I'm Hollis Taylor, and I'm a non-binary person, and I call myself a divine androgyne. Be like saying that you're a monk or a practitioner of magic or something like that. Maybe it depends on what path you walk. See, one of the things I noticed as I started to come out and started to identify as non-binary, I started to realize that there was no spiritual path for people like me. There were some things like indigenous people, but I don't want to culturally appropriate. I didn't grow up on a reservation. And I think Two-Spirit is great, and I want them to keep it. And I felt like I had to define my own path, because I didn't have a huge background in these things. And so I started to explore things. And, of course, some religions shame us, right? And then there's some religions that don't even include us, like Wicca. I went to many rituals, and never, not once, did they mention someone that was both or neither gender or god or goddess. Unless you asked, and then they would often have a goddess or something. But there was no language for it. And so as I started my own spiritual path, my own path of holistic learning, I learned that I really needed a spiritual path in order to be who I was. I felt like it was part of humanity. It was part of being a human. And I needed to be celebrated in my spiritual path. I needed to be seen, and I didn't want any of the shame. So that's not for me. That's theirs. And so as I started to unfold, I started to realize that I had my own path, and each one of us actually do. You do. Everybody does. Has their own spiritual path that they're to unlock. Your authenticity is in your heart, just like it was in mine. There were some things I had to go through to unlock those keys, to get closer to who I really was inside. Because all of us are divine conscious beings, and you have to work through some weird stuff sometimes, like cultural norms and gender roles and, gosh, mental health and the crap your parents programmed in there. Sometimes we have to unfold that out. And when we do, we get to an authentic person when we move through those surface things. And when we find our authenticity, we can go deeper. We can love deeper. We can love ourselves deeper. We can love other people deeper. And we can enjoy our life fuller and more, and feel more complete by the time it comes time to, end, because we all die. None of us get out of alive. So just consider, as you start to identify and find your gender is not something that was given, that is not something that was assigned to you when you were born. As you start to realize your gender expression, no matter what it is, I'm talking to the drag queens, the drag kings, the gay guys, transgender people, non-binary people, gender-neutral people, all of us, we're all here for a reason. The divine sent us here. We're all here to define our own path. Make it what it is. Follow that part of you that doesn't follow the rules. The part of you that doesn't do what other people are doing. Because that part of you will lead you to the path you need to be on. And you will manifest the beautiful things that the world desperately needs. All of us are where we need you. We need you to step up and bring your most beautiful light to the world. And I hope that that's what this book does. That my book, Divine Androgyne, A Sacred Path for Gender Variant People, and this channel will inspire you to find out who you are and open it up to the world and deliver it. As if we were all waiting for it. But we didn't know what we were waiting for exactly. Show us what that is.
Tune in to Kaleidoscope Eyes with your host, trans man LaCrosse Ortiz. Every week, we will be touching topics within the LGBTQIA plus community. We will also be having interviews with individuals within the community and allies. Journey with us as we share in their struggles and triumphs every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome to Rainbow Soul, part of the WLFE DB Network, an explorative discussion about spirituality beyond mainstream religions. Hollis Taylor, author, psychic, astrologer, and alchemical mage, brings their non-binary perspective together with fellow drag king and trans man LaCrosse Ortiz, a Jewish Taino with spiritual background of exploration that has led him to an atheist perspective. Join these guys as they explore deep and difficult topics, all related to spirituality, offering a queer perspective and exploration of interesting topics and engaging guests to help explore conversations for the Rainbow Soul.
Hey,
How are you?
hey, LaCrosse. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
So awesome to do Rainbow Soul once again.
Yep.
I'm so grateful to do this amazing show. I feel like we're reaching out to the people in the world and bringing them some messages they might need to hear. And welcome, Chanel. I'm so glad you're here to watch the show. And Sandy, so beautiful to see your face again, your comments. Thanks for being here. Thanks for interacting, you guys. We appreciate your comments. And, just if you have questions or comments, we love to hear and see them. So I'm Hollis, and I'm one of the show hosts, and I'm an author. I'm a psychic. I'm the author of this book, Divine Androgyne. It's a sacred path for gender variant people, and I wrote it for you. That's right, for gender variant people, because I just felt like we didn't have a whole lot of sacredness in the world. And so, LaCrosse, tell us about who you are.
I'm LaCrosse Ortiz. I am a Taino Jewish atheist, believing in spirituality, where if there is a divine, it's irrelevant because we determine our path. So, and just learning. I love to learn, and which is kind of ended up how I ended up on this half of the spectrum, because I'm learning every week through this. This is great.
Well, the best spiritual path is when you're learning all the time, my friend.
Exactly.
That's for sure. I'm always learning too. Yeah. And I am so glad. Well, welcome, Bright Hawk. Love seeing my beautiful Bright Hawk. And thank you, Chanel. Your open video is beautiful, Hollis. Thank you, Chanel. Thanks for seeing it. I'm trying to get the message out there that gender variant people are sacred. And I appreciate that, Sandy. I like Bright Hawk's drums too. And Eve, I am looking forward to tonight's topic too, because, well, I'm an author, and I feel like when I wrote this book, I don't know like how much writing you do, LaCrosse. Like, everybody has a different calling. Some people are meant to do different things. And I was writing this book while I was on the road. I started writing this book when I was doing drag, actually, as a drag king. As I started to explore my gender, I started to write my story because something was happening inside of me, and I felt really compelled to write it. And it first showed up as a blog, and I like blog style writing, actually.
Blog. I used to.
You like blogs too? Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just a style of writing, and I think it's cool, and you can do it however you want, or poetry, or whatever calls to you. But there is some sort of sacredness that sort of calls you, and I felt very called to write this book. Like, I felt like Spirit was like, would you write the damn book already? People need your help. And it really was in my face. Gender variant people were killing themselves around me, and it was making me sad. We reached some of the highest levels of suicide amongst our transgender siblings, and I was really called to write. And I actually have that knock going on right now, to be a writer, to go back to writing and come back to it, especially now as my health problems start to fade and I start to step forward into my path again and try to get on my path in a good way. I start to being called to it. So I was surprised to look at I was looking through my friends, and I was like, hey, look at, who's this? And someone had posted an event and invited me to it, actually. And I was like, who's this Annie Finch? And I started looking, and I was like, oh, whoa, she does sacred writing, and look at this. And she's even accepting of gender variant people. And well, then that makes her really special. Then I need to get her on Rainbow Soul. We need to find out about this. So my friends, I asked Annie, and she gracefully accepted. So I want to welcome Annie Finch. Annie Finch, come on out to the stage.
Hello, Hollis. Hello, Lacrosse.
Hi.
Welcome.
You in person. I've been watching your shows. I'm really enjoying that. Wow, cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, really
Thanks.
are. I love it.
Tell us about tell the audience and us about who you are, where you come from, and what you do.
I am a poet. My nickname, handle, identity really is Poetry Witch. So I am, let's see, as a poet, I have a very, my definition of what a poet is and the job of a poet is both wide and very, very precise. So I do quite a few things, but I do them with great precision and care around being a poet. One of them is that I perform my poetry. I started something called Poetry Witch Ritual Theater, where I do these like mystery plays that are poetry, and then the ritual at the end. So it brings the witchcraft in. I do them for like the winter solstice, for the Wheel of the Year, especially for Yule and Ostara. So there's that. So I consider part of it being a performance and a witch. I also publish lots of books of poetry. I started my own community online called Poetry Witch Community, where I bring together witches, poets, who identify as women or gender non-conforming, like just to come together and just explore the connection between poetry and magic and ritual. I've also done a lot of teaching and editing of books and writing of books. I got a Ph.D. from Stanford, and I did all that because I'm trying to also educate people, poets and everybody, about my special connection with poetry, which is through the rhythm of it and the meter. So to me, this is what really brings the sacredness in. So this is all, part of my identity as a poet. I've also written plays. I translate poetry. I do criticism of poetry. I do a lot of different things. And I'm actually working on a book now called Witchosophy, Notes Towards a Magical Future. So that will be like cultural criticism. But I'm always trying to keep in mind the poet's angle to that as well. So,
wow. Yeah. And right now you have an event or
a class.
Like a class.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. In my community, poetrywitch.com, I do teach like meter and rhythm, and we'll talk about that today, I guess, what I mean by that sacred beat of a rhythm that to me is the essence of poetry. So I teach that. Also, I have this amazing class called the Magic of Rhythmic Writing, which is it brings my teaching together as a poet, a witch, everything together. And it's this technique that I've learned and developed really myself, which is when I bring people together, and they don't have to be poets, they don't have to be even writers, but of course poets and writers get a lot out of it, for this sacred writing technique, which is about rhythm. It's about learning the different rhythms and what they mean to yourself, like how to hear your voices inside speaking the different rhythms and connect with yourself and connect with the earth through that rhythmic process. It's a 6-week class. It's pretty magical, and it's also a ritual as part of the class. So we devote 1 week to each element. So we start with the fire, and then the air, and then they each have their own rhythm. We work in those rhythms. They connect with, like, the fire connects with your will. The air rhythm gets you in touch with your mind. That's the one that's right now the only one available really in our culture. So what I'm about is what I call metrical diversity, rhythmic diversity, bringing in the rhythms of air, which is the body, which is the earth rhythm, the heart, the water rhythm, the center, the spirit rhythm, and the will, the fire rhythm. So teaching people how to access these rhythms for your own writing, and also just to get in touch and listen to your inner voices. They're powerful.
Wow, that's really powerful that you talk about the different energies of writing, because I was thinking about my book when I was writing my book.
Mm-hmm.
There were times that I was at, intentional, magical, alchemical fire circles. I'm sure you're aware of the community. And I would, you go on the outside of the community. They're all dancing around the fire and drumming and singing and such. And I would go all the way on the outside to where I wouldn't be disturbing anyone. And I would write.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like the fire was speaking to me. If I tried to go into the fire and go around the fire with everybody else, I couldn't do it. It would be like, no, go right.
Yeah.
And it'd be the middle of the night, It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's what was calling me. And each one of the chapters actually came through during a fire circle.
Wow. That is so
every
cool.
Single one.
Do you think the drumming was also part of it?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. Because definitely, Bright Hawk is usually drumming because I was with her.
Yeah.
So she'd be drumming, yes, often. But sometimes when she would drum, I would go back in. And then do some spins around the fire, do a few circles, and then come back out again.
And then feel inspired.
Come back out and then go finish.
Yeah.
And go finish
Yesterday
the
I
chapter.
taught a workshop I just moved to Philadelphia. I've been in Europe for like almost a year. I'm just back, getting my American culture shock. But I just went yesterday. I got asked to do a workshop at the Philadelphia Pagan Pride Day. So I was there doing my workshop, and there was this really cool drummer there. So we were working together a bit, and he introduced me, I think that's his pronoun. He introduced me to this new rhythm I hadn't really heard before. No, sorry, it was and it was so funny. Like within like 2 minutes, Hollis, like after he said this to me, this rhythm. It was a Lithuanian rhythm, actually, that he knew from Lithuanian folk dances. He's very respected in the folk dance community. This rhythm it snapped me, like you were talking about, just snapped me into this hypnotic state. And I was like, wait, I have to write this poem. And the poem just came to me in that rhythm. Like, it was like it opens a door, right? Very physical process. It's not really your mind. It's something else. Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely, it's interesting that you said that, because I always wondered, like, as each chapter came in, I didn't know it was a chapter until later towards the end. I actually got that download at the fire. The fire was kind of like, so everything that you've downloaded thus far is a chapter.
Yeah.
And if you go look, each one of the fires that you journaled in is a chapter. And I was like, oh my gosh, it really is. And then I just had to organize it and edit it and whatnot. And I had another fire circle person edit it. So yeah, it was really special in that way. Yeah. And the way, I guess maybe the drums might have been talking to me, but also there seemed to be some sort of power right in the center of the sacred fire.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely, alchemical fires are very sacred.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
It's a tool. I mean, the rhythm is a tool. And I think a lot of us nowadays, people like to talk about, poetry as this special thing. Like we say, oh, that was so poetic, or poetry in motion, or all this kind of thing. But, when you really think about it, like, what is it that makes poetry so special? And is it really that poets are that much smarter or more sensitive, or we really like these, gods on earth? No, I think it's because we had this technique of writing in rhythm that like connects us with nature. It connects us with our bodies. It connects us with the rhythms, the cycles, and it allows us to channel down. It's like a shamanic drum beat, and it allows us to heal. And I kind of believe that poets and witches are really pretty essentially bound in many cultures. These roles are very integrally related. So, it's I think sometimes we still have this reverence for poetry, but we forget how and why poets have that. Now that we have the page, and they're always just write, sit in the classroom, stare at the page. That's not how poets got to be so great and powerful and important to a culture, by sitting in a classroom and staring at the pages, because they were like you at the fire, just channeling it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of poets come, to the alchemical fire because we'll be turning around, and sometimes people will channel a poem right there at the fire, or a song.
Yeah.
They'll turn it into a song. Abigail McBride does that a lot. And
Cool.
I mean, I appreciate the rhythm and the rhyme, or the usually poetry moves me. Usually it moves my heart and my soul.
Ritual, spells. Yeah, my book, one of my books is called Spells. That's so important. Yeah, it's like, it's funny. It's actually, it snapped right out of my head. Please continue what you were saying.
It's okay. It's okay. So what I was thinking is, how about lacrosse? In your Taino tribe, I'm sure there's writing down of things. There has to be at this point, right?
Well, at this point, yes, but before they used petroglyphs, so they didn't really use. They had a language, but they didn't have words. So
they probably had an oral tradition passed down for the poetry, and the petroglyphs were for a different kind of communication, right?
Right.
They must have had, because every time you have an oral tradition, the other thing about meter, it helps people remember. So these epics that we have, the Kalevala or the Aeneid or the Odyssey, they were all passed down for hundreds, thousands of years just without any writing, and meter allows you to do that because it allows you to remember, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's probably their storytelling around this fire, right, lacrosse? Around the sacred fire?
We're fortunate in an unfortunate way. Ramon Panay ended up documenting all the stories. He didn't understand them, though. So as now, like him and Bartolomeo de la Casa, they wrote everything down. Then when the Taino people, when the resurgence started, we started saying, oh, well, that's what that means. It's pretty easy to decipher that story, because they were like, what does it mean? Oh, well, it means this, and that. And it became a collective. So we ended up getting our writings back, but it's just sad how we ended up having them documented,
Yeah, so then you have to take the document and decipher that.
Yes.
Right, that other layer got, yeah, exactly,
But it's
one of my dear friends and colleagues, Marianella Medrano, a poet that I've worked with to lead a lot of circles. She is a Taino poet and goddess scholar, and has done amazing stuff about Atebera and some of these incredibly cool goddesses from that area. Yeah.
Neat. And I know you're also familiar with the Jewish faith, Jewish mysticism. I always say it incorrectly, Kabbalah, right? Are you familiar with that, Annie?
Me? Kabbalah? Yeah. To some extent, what I'm most interested in is the Shekinah, the whole feminine principle, feminine energy in Judaism, which is so often just ignored. And I think sometimes when you see a very strong patriarchal religion culture, that's ancient, Judaism is really the mother, right, of or the parent of Christianity and Islam and all of these monotheistic God cultures that are centered on the book and the word and on patriarchy, they all come out of Judaism. But if you go back into Judaism, it's actually was a matrilineal and very much centered a tribal culture. And I'm very convinced now. I've been doing a lot of work with an association called ASWM, Association for the Study of Women in Mythology, which is all about the matriculture and the matrilineal. This is a book that just got translated into English recently. It's a survey of all the matriarchal societies in the world and all the things they have in common by Heidi Güttner-Abendroth, a great, great German scholar. Just got translated into English. It's been around in Germany for like 20 years. But Heidi, has done all this research and discovered 4 things in common among all these matrilineal cultures: consensus decision-making, a gift economy, matrilineal family structure, which means that everything passes through the mother line and they all live together, and also the goddess worship. It's like essential. So every goddess worshiping culture also usually has gods as well, and androgynous gods and deities as well. So there's a whole gender fluidity there. But when you get into there's just a few of these only male monotheistic cultures where there's one god and it's a male. And I think that in Judaism, it's like the parent of them all, and it's almost a reaction to the earlier strength of that earlier matrilineal culture. And the Shekinah was that original female principle in Judaism, that feminine energy. So that's been my interest in it, is looking for the traces in Judaism of that matrilineal energy and just how you can find it, like even in the beauty of the geometry of the synagogues, the really old ones, it's just amazing. My own lineage spiritually is Quaker, and also both of my parents were really like spiritual adventurers, and they discovered like goddessy stuff like Merlin stone and everything around the time that I did when I was in my 20s. So they were super supportive, and a lot of these books I have, not this one, but like for example, this book I've been reading here, which is an excellent introduction to like goddess stuff, if anybody's into that, The Great Cosmic Mother. This is like a classic book this is my mom's copy, get this, my mom's copy, Maggie Finch. She was a witch too. She was a witch. And look what she writes, 1988, but later on she started writing 9988. She would sign her letters to me like in the 1980s, adding an extra 8,000 years to the year, because that's how old the goddess civilization was, like 8,000 years before. She was so cool. So I'm reading her books now again that I found that got rescued with like her notes on them from the 1980s, which is so wild.
Wow. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
you still got her notes.
My own handwriting to them. It's so funny. Like this lineage that, if we don't hold on to it, those of us who believe in liberation and freedom and, bringing back that balance, bringing the feminine energy back into the planet, which I believe that the divine androgynous among us are doing. Like it's all about just opening up that fluidity and that spectrum and that energy of flow and just the principles of the matriarchal way of, it's consensus decision making, the gift economy, the flow. It's just like letting people be, freedom. And when people think about like a matriarchy, a lot of times they think, oh, it doesn't exist, because the reason nobody believes that they exist, even though Heidi convincingly shows to me that every continent on the planet had originally that kind of way of being, right? It's natural. We can all feel it. Everybody knows it. But for so long, anthropologists didn't believe that the matriarchies existed. And the reason is because they thought they were going to look like the opposite of a patriarchy. They imagined a whole bunch of women like going around telling everybody what to do. It's like, fuck that. Women don't want to waste time doing that. I mean, it's so, as you see, I do identify as a woman still, but and maybe always, but I think maybe I'm a sort of an androgynous woman. Like my idea about like in a, I don't, should I just keep talking? I'm just talking.
You can, because I have something to relate to that. Go ahead and speak.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot in terms of your show, you know, and one of my children is gender fluid. So I've really thought about this stuff a lot. And I've also, you know, been in communities that are in upheaval right now. It's a very, you know, challenging time for so many who identified as like lesbians or women separatists in the 70s and 80s. And, you know, how are they dealing with this whole fluidity that we now have around gender? It's complex. But I guess my feeling about it is that the idea of what gender roles are that we all have right now has been formed under patriarchy, under thousands of years of patriarchy. So I feel like in a way we don't even know what those genders are, or even maybe what those sexes are. Like women's sexuality, Freud said, was an undiscovered continent. I mean, the number of women who like don't orgasm because they've never figured out, and I'm going to say it right now, squeeze those muscles around something. Don't do Kegels, just empty Kegels. Stick something up there and squeeze it. And you got like 12 different muscles. You know, there's like 4 sides on the bottom, 4 sides in the middle, 4 sides on the top. Just squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. You'll be amazed. You'll be amazed. I mean, you know, there's just a lot of powerful information about our bodies, about our souls that we just are out of touch with, but that doesn't mean it's going to be hard to get it back. Like it's right there under the surface, you know? It's like, it's because it's real, it's right there. We just got to like get back in tune with it.
I absolutely vibe with you on that, Annie, because let me just say that like one of the reasons I don't go all the way as a trans man is because of my sacred connection. Now, when I first started to explore, I started to be like, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not a woman and I'm not this and that. But there is a part of me that's like, but I was born into a woman's body and I was brought up in this world as a girl. I lived as a mother, as a wife, as a sacred slut. I did it. I really lived the life as a woman, and I can't walk away from that 100%. If someone uses he on me, unless I'm in drag, and then it's just a temporary existence for me, and I know that. So if they use he on me, I always feel like, but I think you're ignoring a huge sacred piece of me. And I learned that sacredness from the pagans, from witches that taught the sacredness of femininity, and the beauty of mother, of goddess, the red tent, and things like that. So I really felt as though, even as a feminist, that I could not completely leave that path. As if I did, I would only be abandoning my sisters. Even though I'm not saying that just because somebody transitions that they abandon, because lacrosse here certainly doesn't. It's
a different way of bringing in the energy, you know, or widening. Like,
and I felt like that's what this tattoo was, because this tattoo, as you know, tattoo's a sacred mark, right? Started out as a feminist symbol, right?
Yay!
And then when I started to go through menopause, I added the androgynous symbols to it.
Beautiful.
That's what I did. I added the masculine for my father having my back, and the both, because that's where I'm going forward. Because my androgyny comes from a place of feminism, that if we can find equality within androgynous and gender variant people, if we can allow them, because in there, if you look at gender variant people, for instance, a drag queen is seen as lesser than, or a trans woman is seen lesser than. Why? Because they are seeing her step down, because women are less valued. And that is proof. That is proof that
Wow.
we still come from a mentality
Right.
where people like lacrosse, and I know lacrosse, we've talked about this before, people like lacrosse are seen as just like a faker or something, right? Like, you know, like he's just trying to be something he's not. But he's not as demeaned as our drag queens or trans sisters, right, lacrosse?
No, not in society, not at all. But I think that's where. But then when people find out what I was born, then it's a whole different ballgame. You know, so it's all according. But I think, like, as a trans man, it took for me to become a man to accept the femininity. I mean, I have 4 children. You know, I have 6 children. Two are not biologically mine, but I have 6. And I've realized that my job as a human being was to, because the truth is, people don't listen to women most of the time. They don't, because they figure, oh, you're just being emotional, you're just on hormones, you're feeling this. And this is kind of like my door where I can open up and say, hey, no, you guys are wrong. Don't talk about them like that. Don't treat them like that.
Exactly.
Not that they need me to speak for them, but if I am going to take this journey, it is only right that I be an ambassador and a representative and be a protector, because if they're not going to listen to them, I'm going to sure as hell make sure they listen to me, and I'll pull that male card if I have to make them realize you're being ridiculous. This is not proper.
I totally agree with you. I mean, the gender binary under patriarchy is so oppressive and so restrictive to everybody, and that anything that fucks with it and just like opens it up and expands the idea of what each gender is and everything in between is just, it's good trouble. I really do believe. We're all allies on it, you know.
I would say me transitioning into a male is basically a step down to me. I don't consider this a step up. This is a step down. So I have to step down to actually be in tune with that femininity, which is a step up.
Wow.
You see, that's being.
That's so magical.
I was toxic masculinity, toxic as could be, and I'm Latino. That's as toxic as you get sometimes. And I can speak for myself and my people. But at the end of the day, it took for me to transition,
right,
and to become a man, to tap into that femininity.
I hear you. Yeah, exactly. I do really believe, though, that when you have those super patriarchal pockets, that in a way that the reason they're like that is because they are reacting against such a powerful matrilineal base that's still there, and it's really just under the surface, right? So, you know, that's something to. It's tough times for the
fear and intimidation.
I think Eve here has a beautiful thing to say here. I think Eve said it really good. I really identify with this. There's also some of us who are non-binary that if we abandon either to become the other, exactly, we're still not embracing our whole selves. So we still lose something rather than embracing the duality or panorama of the divine aspects. I totally agree with you, Eve. That's exactly where I'm at. That I like to embrace both. And I really totally fully feel that I'm both, because I was a masculine person born into a woman's body and I spent the first half of my life trying to be a full-on woman, going, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And then eventually I came to the understanding that I was actually sacred. And so all you gender variant people out there, regardless of how you come to it, whether you're a trans man like Lacrosse, whether you're both like me, or if you're like Annie and you're totally feminine and feel like a woman, but sometimes you feel like you're a little bit of a gender bender.
Michelle says I'm non-binary, and I just haven't quite figured that out yet. And when I look back at my life, you know, who knows what I would have done now? So who knows? I mean, it's but whatever.
And it doesn't matter how.
I'll be the.
It doesn't matter how you identify. If you push just a little bit of gender, or if you're an ally and you stand with gender variant people, know that you are important. You are valid, and we need you. We need you, we need you, we need you, because like Annie said, it's probably what will bring down the patriarchy really in the end. And I totally get with you on that.
Maybe I'm just undercover.
Exactly. I mean, I think it is. I was thinking about this a lot today, you know, thinking about the show and everything. And one thing that came up was that women, you know, I think it may be on some level personally, I might feel more non-binary than I realized growing up when I did in the 60s and 70s, because there was so much pressure. But also, I do think that women is a political category that, you know, we probably is useful to have, because if you look at things like, I was just talking to somebody about this, to my husband about this, and he was like, and I was like, yeah, I mean, it's true. Like with abortion rights and stuff, you can say pregnant people with equal pay. You can say everybody deserves equal people. So do you really need the category of women? And he was like, what about like political representation? Or what about when you look at the publishing world? Like if you get rid of that category of women, then you don't have that idea of, okay, well, how many women are in this magazine anyway? Or how many women are in Congress? You know, like politically, it's a category that has necessity. I would think, but it's a really, I think it's so great to think about. I mean, just politically, it's great to like just blow open everybody's mind about all this stuff, because whatever exists right now is not helpful, you know, the status quo. But also I think from a sacred point of view, like I love this podcast. I love what you're doing, because, and I do feel it connects to the rhythms as well, because in the same way, I think that you channel, you know, that poets or people who are writing in these sacred rhythms, who are and medicine people, shamanic people, you know, the same way that you're channeling the genders, which you can really do, you can also channel these rhythms and the different parts of the self. So it's almost like you're able to look in all these different directions, and just kind of help to bring people together that way into a community. How can we have a community if we don't have like someone channeling that energy and just opening, like Hollis at the fire, like just letting it come through?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel like I'm channeling the rhythms of masculinity when I'm dressed as a drag king. I'm sure even LaCrosse, you probably feel like you're channeling like a character. Like I know you do like Edward Scissorhands and people like that. And you kind of, when I do Michael Jackson or Elton John, I'm channeling their energy down into me. I don't do Michael Jackson anymore out of respect for people of color, but I do Elton John. And when I do, thank goodness he's a good guy. So it makes it really easy, right? And so then I just channel his energy and I watch the way he behaves and stuff. And I can come to a pride and appear like Elton. But when I do, I'm channeling that rhythm of him. I'm bringing that and presenting it to the world.
Exactly. I channel William Butler Yeats that really poets really love, especially the ones in Ireland. It's like, I shall arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin built there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows shall I have there, a hive for the honeybee, and live alone in the bee loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, where peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of evening to where the cricket sings. Their evenings all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and morning full of the linnet's wings. And I shall have some peace there, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore. Though I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray, I hear it in the deep heart's core. When I'm in Ireland, I do a really totally more Yeatsy low voice, but you're channeling. When you speak a poem like that, because of the rhythm, you're channeling the body of the poet. And that's a magical thing, to be able to put those words in your mouth and channel the physical reality of their body.
Yeah, that's interesting that you talk about as when you channel. Like I notice when I do tarot readings and I start channeling the spirit energy of whatever the meaning of the cards are, but spirit channels through me to deliver messages to people. I don't know what's going on in people's personal lives watching that, I don't know. And when I'm doing that, I noticed the words come out rhythmically.
Yeah,
And I'm
well,
like,
crazy. I don't know, it's not crazy. It makes total sense. So in ancient Ireland, the bards used to go to like bard school for 20 years or whatever. And the main thing that they learned, because there was no writing, right? And they learned to memorize poems and stuff. But one of the main things they learned was rhythms and meters. Like when I teach my Magic of Rhythmical Writing class, I teach 5 meters usually, or sometimes 4. The 5th one is kind of sacred, so I kind of save it till the end and see if everybody's ready for it, because it's like we have to go through the rhythms of the will and the mind and the body and the heart before we move into the spirit. And I think actually people's lives sometimes unfold in that order as well. I've spent decades developing this class, so I've worked in the different orders, and I finally have one that really I feel is helpful, accurate. But, you know, we do 5 rhythms. And if you compare it to like the Sanskrit or the ancient Irish rhythms that the bards, they learned dozens, hundreds in Sanskrit, and I believe dozens in ancient Ireland at least. So one of the things they were doing was refining their ability to be a channel by learning these rhythms, so that however the rhythm wants to come through, however those words want to come through, they'll find a ready channel in several different ways, many different ways. That's kind of amazing, right? So that's how I started working in meter myself, was to just make myself the best channel that I possibly could. And having taught this to so many poets, and as you both know, I'm sure, you know, in order to really move forward in your truth, you just have to ignore what's out there because it's already so out of date, right? And this idea that meter is like old-fashioned or unnecessary, or I know maybe it's unnecessary to many poets. I don't know. It clearly is, but the idea that it's not helpful to anybody anymore is so ridiculous, because I work with these poets. I work with them for years, and people are like, "Oh my God, you're blowing my mind! This is so incredible! You've changed everything!" And but as you know, but except the thing I was going to say way before that I forgot was that the pagans totally get it. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my own struggles over the decades as a poet who has been writing in meter for a long, long, long time. For such a long time, people didn't get it that I was, the only poets they would think would write in meter would be like neoconservative white men. Like, you know, because there were, especially in the 90s and still today, a lot of neoconservative white men who like to write in like iambic pentameter because it makes them feel powerful and reminds them of the good old days, I think, or it just makes them feel secure. And I even heard a man say one time, "We have to bow down to master pentameter." Literally, he said that. So, you know, the thing that people don't get when they hear that I write in meter, it's like, wait a minute, she's a feminist, she's a progressive, she's like totally on the left. How could she possibly write in meter? That's such an old-fashioned thing to do. And then so I had my struggle with that for a long time, but meanwhile I was developing my spirituality. And then when I came out as a witch, was like in 2010, I started a blog called American Witch, which was still kind of scary at that time, for me anyway. But when I came out as a witch, then people started to say, how can she be a progressive feminist and write in meter? Oh, she's a witch. Oh, I get it now. Like it computed all of a sudden. And, you know, I think it's no coincidence that, as you were saying, Hollis, so many pagans are like in tune with just how the poetry flows and the magic aspects of rhythm, and, you know, and it just kind of get into it. It's really cool, but the wider world is sort of stuck with still with that 1 meter of the mind, more iambic, and not with the others, and certainly not with the ritual aspect of it yet. But
I thought. Okay, I was just going to say this, and maybe it's because I've spent too much time in the pagan world. I had no idea. I had no idea there was this belief system. Like, I had no idea what you're talking. I had just no, like, I thought that if you spoke in meter, you must be speaking something magical and sacred. So yeah. I should listen up.
Yeah.
Just because maybe because I've spent so much time around the fire or something, because that's
Yeah,
what a lot of
no,
people
as a
do.
pagan, I mean, I think among pagans, people get it. It's true. But yeah, I came through like the literature world. I got a master's in creative writing, a Ph.D. in literature, sitting in the classroom. I taught English. I taught poetry writing for decades at colleges and stuff like that. Now I have my own teaching I do at Poetry Witch community. But yeah, I think in that world, if you go look at, who the poets are, who are publishing all the books and winning all the prizes, most of them are writing poetry that doesn't have a real structure to it. It's considered kind of embarrassing, I think. It's like too old-fashioned or something. I feel it's probably because spirituality in general is considered something you don't really bring into the university. And so much of our educational system is basically very patriarchal. And it depends on, go away from home, go into this place. It's kind of like, separate from everybody, get rid of all your feelings and get into your mind is a lot of what happens in the education. There's a really good essay about that. If anybody out there is interested in education, Lisa Ruddick wrote a really great essay about what happens when people go to like graduate school. They go on beyond the undergraduate and they get an advanced degree in something. And there's like a hazing process where you have to leave like your feelings behind. And it's a great essay by Lisa Ruddick, Ruddick. So I think, it says something pretty sad about a culture when the culture as a whole doesn't have spirituality at its core. And, when we travel to other places, everywhere I've been practically, besides, this very small, really the United States and some of the developed countries in like Europe, they are different from the rest of the world, right? And it's because we don't have spirituality at the core anymore. And we are so out of touch with that matrilineal, consensus decision-making, nature-based way of living. There's a couple of anthropologists in Norway did a really interesting study where if anybody wants to look it up, you can look up weird cultures, WEIRD, Western, educated, industrialized, rich democracies. Weird. Western, educated, industrialized, rich democracies. And what they discovered was they did these like very simple tests, perception, psychological tests, like, is this line inside the box, or is it outside the box, or is this line longer than that line, or whatever. Just the kind of tests that they do on people's perceptions of the world. And they discovered that these weird countries, Western, educated, industrial, rich democracies, had totally different responses than the rest of the world. So a fairly small percentage of the world. And within that little subset, Americans had even weirder than everybody else. And why? Maybe they thought it was because we spend so much time, people in the US spend so much time inside that we have like different perceptions of nature or whatever. But like our reality is not at all normal. It's really dysfunctional. It's a mess. And I just spent like a year in Portugal, which is closer at least to, a sane human way of being. I came back to the US and I'm like, what is going on here? There's just, things are so ugly and weird and inhuman and disrespectful, and you can't even like take a walk without running into like garbage and highways, and it's just a mess. Like, who's in charge of this ship? It's not like a group of women or elders, those androgynous elder women that you were talking about. After menopause, women do become a lot more androgynous, and I think many cultures have like the main decisions are made by women together who have this like way of connecting and getting things done in a very practical way. And it's like they're not in charge in this country, and everybody's suffering, and the whole world is copying us. And oh, sheesh, like things are a mess. So that's one of the reasons I'm desperately trying to teach these rhythms as fast as I can, as well as I can. I'm writing books now about this particular thing, the magic of rhythmical writing. Like I was employed within the university system for quite a while. For like 10 years, I haven't been, and I've just been developing my own thing, which has been tough sometimes, but I'm doing it, and I'm grateful now because I'm developing my own way of teaching this important knowledge, which I think will help people, think more like pagans when it comes to our words and acknowledge the rhythms, the sacred rhythms that you were just talking about. And if poets start doing their job, if writers and pagans start spreading these rhythms, I think it could be helpful because, I think one of the things wrong with this patriarchal culture is that the mind is like God. The mind is revered over so many other things. And it's like the heart and the soul and the body are kind of in a lower position. So these rhythms can elevate all to the same. So the wider system I'm talking about, even beyond the rhythms, but the rhythms have been my path into it, is I call the 5 directions. And it's basically a sacred circle, with the same 5 directions that we find, or sometimes some different cultures have 7, or, different elements and things, but it's a kind of a fairly standard witchy pagan circle with a couple of differences. I go counterclockwise. Very important. To me, that's the energy towards the earth, towards the female principle, that needs to be balanced out, and then I start in the south with the will. Very important. For a long time, I only had 4 directions. Like many pagans have 4 directions, right? Mind, body, heart, spirit. But then this all started when I had a short-lived business for a while that I divided along these principles. So I really tested in the field, so to speak. So I added this 5th thing for the will. The will, obviously, right? If it harms none, do as you will. This is the first law of witchcraft. So the will is really important. But when we talk about mind, body, heart, spirit, we often leave out the will. And the problem when you leave out the will is that people can confuse the will with, like, they might think their mind is the will. That's a mess, right? Or they might think their heart is the will, and then they get all confused with their emotions. Or they think their body is the will, then they can get really self-indulgent with the body. Or they think the spirit is the will, and then they lose their sense of self. So it's really important to put the will in its place as one of that sacred circle, the 5th thing. And when you do that, it's like the heart, the body, the spirit, and the mind can kind of take their place, and all should be equal. So I teach all these rhythms equally. I learned this after teaching college creative writing for so long, realizing that if people were learning poetry, if they learned any rhythm at all, they only learned iambic, the meter of the mind. So I started teaching all these 5 rhythms that I have. The other meters would be the anapest for the anapest for the will, the iamb for the mind, the trochee for the body, the dactyl for the heart, and the amphibak for the spirit. That's my whole secrets right there for all the poetry nerds out there. And so it's like when we bring in these 5 directions, you don't even have to be writing in rhythms to use these 5 directions and their wisdom. And I use it a lot in my daily life. Like, say I'm packing for a trip, and I think, or say I'm like dealing with a problem in my life, or say I'm coming up with an idea for a book or something, and I have and I'll have different parts, and I'll be like, oh, that's kind of like the heart, that's kind of like the mind, that's kind of like the will, that's kind of like the spirit. What am I missing? Oh yeah, I'm missing the body. And then I'll think, oh yeah, the body, there's a 5th thing. So, it helps for checking out lots of different situations, just to sort of make sure you're checking in with those 5 different aspects of yourself: will, mind, body, heart, and spirit. So,
well, that's really beautiful. I love the way you've sort of packaged that up to be what I would consider holistic, where it includes all parts of us. Because I feel like if you don't, like, a lot of LGBTQIA people don't have sacredness in our life. We don't have sacredness in our life. So then as a result, we're missing that sacredness. And then as a result, we there's something out of balance. And I think that's why we have a high suicide rate and things like that, because we don't integrate sacredness. And we were talking about this, Lacrosse and I talked about this in the week when we talked about the sacredness of being gender variant, the divine androgyne.
I saw that.
Spirit. Yeah. And that's if you don't integrate some sort of spiritual path, you're not going to feel wholeness in your life. Exactly. And even Lacrosse, being an atheist, would even vouch for that, right? I mean,
the wholeness doesn't even have to be deistic or religious or anything. It's just that sense of wholeness, that sense of being part and it helps to be in a circle with other people too, I feel, but also just to have that circle in your own life. Totally agree with you. And this is why this show is so important, because when we have LGBTQIA people like feeling sad or, killing ourselves, killing each other, it's just horrible. I mean, that's the worst thing, because those are the sacred people.
Agreed. And it's unfortunate that even intersex people are, I just want to always honor intersex people. They are physical proof that gender variance exists in the world, and they are currently being altered upon birth before they're even aware that they're intersex as infants. Doctors have the rights. Nowhere in the world do intersex people have their own rights.
Exactly.
They are completely raped of that ability to be intersex upon birth, which is a really sad thing. But we're going to take a little break. I want to remind you guys that if you have a dream, make sure you post it in the chat so that Lacrosse can take a read of it. And when we come back from the break, Lacrosse will hopefully do a dream interpretation, or we'll talk about how dreams show up for us. And then we'll come back, and maybe Annie, you could speak a few poems for us in our second half. Maybe just share a couple of really neat poems that you might have on hand. And anyway, we'll be back in just a few moments.
Thank you.
WLFE-DB Radio has LGBTQ shows like Across the Pond, Rainbow Soul, Everything Yet Nothing, and Inside the Drag Closet. Check out the schedule on WLFE-DB.com. You can even watch them on TV at WLFE-DB.com under LGBTQ Friends, right off our website. Again, it's WLFE-DB.com for your LGBTQ shows and more.
WLFE-DB.com, where talk radio is a whole lot better. Our shows are your shows, and that there makes for a WLFE Digital Broadcast Network is on TV. You can watch all of our shows on WLFE-DB.com. Check out our channels: Paranormal View for all of your paranormal type shows, LGBTQ Friends for all of our LGBTQ shows, Variety Unlimited for all other shows. It runs 24/7 right on WLFE-DB.com. You'll even catch the lives, all in one place. Never miss an episode, past or future. WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows. Search for your favorite shows like Where's My Sage, Inside the Drag Closet, Across the Pond, Everything Yet Nothing, Paratalk Radio, Step into the Paranormal, The Creepy Parlor, Just Cindy, and more. Now you won't miss an episode. Remember, follow Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Make sure you subscribe and follow your favorite WLFE-DB radio shows. You can find our shows where you listen to your favorite podcasts, like Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and more. WLFE-DB Radio is looking for podcasts to join our family. You don't have to fit any strict genre. We're a plethora of shows. If you're looking to jump on a growing network, then contact us at WLFEDBradio@gmail.com.
Wow, Amazon Music just got a whole lot better. Your favorite shows from WLFE-DB Radio can now be found there. Yes, we are on Amazon Music, found under podcasts. Download the app, find podcasts, and search all of your favorite shows. Shows like Where's My Sage, Across the Pond, Everything Yet Nothing, Skeptical Help Bar, The Creepy Parlor, Just Cindy, and much more. Now you don't have to miss an episode ever. Amazon Music is WLFE DB radiofied.
More from WLFE DB Radio Network after this.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We are the hosts of Meet the Author podcast, paranormal investigators and indie published authors. But the show is not about us.
Meet the Author podcast gives you an opportunity to meet and interact with indie published authors on a weekly basis right from your own home. Find out the story behind their stories. Have a chance to hear about their work and new releases on the horizon.
Join us as we engage in casual conversation with insightful guests every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch us live on Facebook, YouTube, or WLFE-DB TV.
Welcome back. Welcome back. And I just want to say, I guess I'm so glad everybody came back, and I hope you guys took a little moment for yourself and got up and walked around for a minute. Now that we're back, lacrosse. I don't think anyone actually shared a dream this time. I know we have viewers, but I guess no one had an interesting dream. But I had a weird one last night that was a little strange because I was first of all, I think I might have been in Pittsburgh or some other dark, what I would consider a dark city.
Pennsylvania. Okay. Anything in Pennsylvania you feel sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Especially, I don't know what my experience in Pittsburgh's been fairly dark. And then and so I'm in a house with a fairly empty house, really. And it's kind of like this old house, and these people, they're younger people, but I seem to know them. And they're some sort of community, but I don't know them now. Like, if I know them in my dream, but I don't know them. And they are presenting something to me in an otherwise empty room. And I'm listening to them, and I'm really taking in what they're saying, but I don't remember what they said now after the dream. But what ends up happening is a really long dream. I feel like I was dreaming this all night long. But that's been happening a lot. And then what happens is the water starts to come up. It starts to flood. And I'm like, well, of course it's flooding, because I told you the entire East Coast is pretty low, close to sea level, and this is what's going to happen with climate change. And and then I start talking about elders, and the conversation that I definitely had was about climate change, that the area was going to flood, and that was kind of my experience. But I wasn't being that rude, but I was feeling that way. Okay, but I was explaining it to them like you would explain something to a young person. And I wasn't being disrespectful to them. And then I was like, and the other point is that you might want to listen to your elders, just like you, as you get older, you learn, right? You learn from your past mistakes. If someone's been here for 40 years or 50 years or 80 years, don't you think they might know a little bit more than you know at 25 years? Okay. And that's what I'm kind of saying to them. But our younger generation right now is kind of like, we hate and I can't blame them, because a lot of boomers and older people are anti-queer. They look down on younger people, and I don't blame them at all. So I totally get where they're coming from, and I tend to be a bridge between the ages, and I know that about myself. But the whole time I'm having this conversation, there's a chair in the water, and the chair is coming up with the water. And I'm looking at the chair, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to get in the chair, because if I do, my ass is going to get all wet, because I don't think it's going to float if I sit in it. I mean, it's floating now, but I don't think if I add my weight to it, it's going to float anymore. And I knew that. So then I just started pushing the chair out of the room. And after I explained a few things about elders and trying to help them see the world from a bigger perspective, trying to help bridge that gap that I often do between generational people, I just started leaving. I just started backing out of the flooding place, and kind of like, okay, I'm going to leave you to it now. I said what you need to hear, and I'm out now.
Right.
That's pretty much.
That's a deep dream. That's a really deep, intense dream. Okay. All right. Now, Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania, I mean, we've talked on multiple occasions. This is not your favorite place in the world. Okay. It's not even close, And so just keep that in mind. All right. Now you're in an old house, it's empty, and you're talking to younger people. And it's funny because they're like gifting you. They're giving you a gift, but the room's still empty. In other words, the way you're looking at society, okay, like you're frustrated with it. You're like, okay, here, we're giving you tools. And all you're giving me is just words, emptiness. You're giving me an empty room. What are you doing to change things that are happening? Then it goes into the environment, how you treat your elders. You see the domino in your dream. All your frustrations are coming out, and you're talking to them like children, because in your mind, they're acting like children. So you have to talk to them like children. To me, what I get from this, and then the chair actually is epic. The chair is epic because the chair to you, in my opinion, represents, if I sit down, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be consequences if I sit down. I could drown, not just get my ass wet. I could drown, all because I'm trying to help these people who are not taking the help that I'm offering them. So what do? Well, you know what? I have given you the tools. Now I'm backing away. Now I got to go. You guys got to start taking the reins, because at the end of the day, we're only here for, we're trying to warn these next generations. Look, this is what you have to look forward to. You guys got to get in gear. This is not the time to be lazy, to be, how do you say, I'm trying to think of the word, complacent. And I feel that you're frustrated with the complacency that's happening, and the lack of people really wanting to do the work to make it a better world that we live in. And you're like, you know what? I'm doing my job and I'm saying my voice. But at the end of the day, I got to step back, because I'm not going to drown because of you. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I did feel like that. I felt like I'm not going to sit in this chair and get all wet for you. Like, you either listen or I guess you just drown.
Yeah. It's basically at the end, you're just leaving them to their own device.
I mean, what else do you do? Now, here's the interesting thing about all my dreams, Lacrosse. They often tell me things that I already know.
Yeah.
So is it just like my mind trying to point these things out, or is it my mind processing them and I'm just witnessing it?
I think it's no different than when we talk out loud.
Okay.
It's like sometimes I'll talk out loud and it's not directed at anybody. I need to hear it for myself. And I know what needs to be done. I know what I got to do. But sometimes it's like that. It's like that voice, we know all the answers. Now, whether we acknowledge the answers, whether we apply the answers, that's a whole different ballgame. Whether we learn from the answers that we already know from the door is entirely up to us. But sometimes we have these dreams, and then when you wake up and you're like, I knew that.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's a no-brainer. I knew that. You know, you're not telling me anything I don't already know. But sometimes we know, but then we're just like, well, maybe something will change, or maybe something will be different. And
yeah, I mean, there's some people that will actually hear what I have to say, but and there's definitely some people I help along the way, but definitely not, you know.
Yeah.
I know it only goes so far. Right. So I try not to. So I want to bring Annie back out, especially because what she said in the chat is absolutely ringing clean for me, because she said in our sort of chat here for us on the show, welcome back, Annie. Hi. Is that, does the chair signify some sort of throne or respected place to sit? It's very possible, because you know what, Annie, that happened right after I had an experience online with some friends and some other pagan ritual people. And one of those people started to pedestal me, and I had a realization of it. Like, I actually had a conscious realization. I don't like when people do that, when they assume that my life is so much better than theirs, and that, you know what I mean? Like, I just, what I'm going to do is just kick that pedestal out. I'm going to do whatever it takes to kick. And I don't like it when people do that. And I get kind of a little triggered and a little, and and then I slept. And that's when I had the dream.
And you have your book out now. So it's like you're dealing with these issues of how to navigate your position and how you're going to deal with all that. Yeah. And also, I really love what you were saying, Lacrosse, about the just the not being heard part as well. And then it's like there's an opportunity to be heard by taking the chair. But if you do that, then the water comes up. And Carl Jung said that the water symbolizes like unconsciousness. So it's like, in order to take that chair, you'd have to suppress some truth that you know by covering it with this water. So,
and the truth that I know is that we're all equal, and that pedestaling is the beginning of narcissism, and it's the beginning of dysfunctional relationships. It's where we begin with dysfunction. It seems to be the sort of kickstart to a dysfunctional relationship, because then we pedestal the person, and then the person feels under pressure, and that can create a little bit of narcissistic behaviors within the person, because they're actually pretty insecure. They're not exactly feeling like they live up to whatever you're pedestaling on them. And then as a codependent, you are disappointed when they don't fulfill whatever that bullshit is.
And meanwhile, they have a lot of extra energy they have to expend to keep the thing up that they think everybody wants them to have, which I used to experience when I was a professor and stuff all the time. And then I went through this painful process of letting go of a bunch of stuff like that. And it was such a relief in the end for me personally to not have it, because then, you know, you just don't waste a lot of time maintaining something that's stiff and not all that helpful.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening to that, Lacrosse. I haven't really told anyone else about that weird one. I seem to be having weird, crazy dreams every night that I kind of go, well, duh. Like, I'm kind of like going to my unconscious, like, can we stop having a movie every night?
I'm so jealous. I don't dream at all anymore, and I really miss it.
Ever since I started the Chantix to quit smoking, it's ridiculous, the dreams I have every night. Like, some people get like terror dreams. I don't. I get weird things. I get the weirdest dreams that just so random. And I'm like, they make no sense. So I literally have to sit down. Okay, write this down. What does this mean to me? Write this down. What does that mean to me? So I can decipher my own brain. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a weird energy. And they say the astrology with Neptune and Uranus are also creating a lot of dreams for people. But I think for some people, they kind of need that wake up kind of, and dreams have done that to me. But these days, they kind of feel like I'm witnessing me talking to myself. like you kind of said, lacrosse. So thanks for hearing it and listening. And thanks, Annie, for your additions, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
I know this might sound really, really simplistic, but have you noticed any pattern of when you eat? Because like I said, I hardly ever dream, but I did notice that if I eat like weird stuff at dinner, sometimes I will remember my dream the next day. So like I try to eat in the middle of the day, not at night, but I don't think that's why, because I miss them too. But I just wondered if you noticed.
So here's what I have noticed is I used to use a whole lot more cannabis edibles to regulate my mood because I've been diagnosed with lots of mental disorders. I don't see them that way. I see them as just a different way of thinking and recovering from trauma. I have PTSD, so when I'm recovering from trauma, I try to use cannabis. And then when I found out that using cannabis every day on a regular basis can be bad for your heart, you can actually create an atrial fib. If you do it occasionally, it's okay. But if you do it regularly, it can create it, or they think it might create an atrial fib. I don't want to do that. My heart's actually really good, even though I have this odd, rare, I have a big heart, literally. And I was born this way. And recently it's become a little bit of a problem. And I've lived with it my whole life this way. And so now I don't want to irritate it or make it any worse than it already is. So I've just kind of been like, oh, let me back up away from cannabis. It's legal here in Colorado, so we can say that just for everybody out there. You can go to the store and buy it here, and it is totally seen as something that to help you regulate your moods. I think that's what happens when a lot of people smoke a lot of cannabis, but I just stopped using it. It was no big deal. I just stopped using it. And now I might use it occasionally, but now I try not to use it too much because of that. So since I've done that, I've been like, I'm not taking indica at night before I go to sleep. I was taking it to help me sleep. So now I'm taking some other herbs to help me sleep, because part of the menopause journey is a lack of sleep.
Yep.
So, yeah. So
does it affect your dreaming?
Yeah, indica does. Indica will keep you from dreaming.
So
I used to actually take it for that reason. Because I don't want to dream every night, because I'll wake up in the morning feeling like I've been at the movies all night. And I didn't really learn anything. It doesn't usually indicate anything to me that's life-changing. Yeah, but if you take indica,
if you eat at night or don't eat, it makes no difference.
No. Me and food, we're really good friends, except sometimes I eat a little too much of it. So I'm a chef too. So yeah, if I eat too much sugar, my heart will race. But that's really just a physical reaction to eating, right? So Eve said certain types of cheese can induce more lucid dreaming. Really? Wow. Lucid dreaming, that's like daytime dreaming, right? So that could probably help you with your sacred writing, I bet.
Totally.
And Sandy says
because
watermelon.
Of what you were saying about intersex, I just wanted to point out that I edited this book last year. It's the first anthology of writing literature about abortion, writers on abortion. And it covers like 5 continents and 6 centuries. It's very comprehensive. But there's one poem in here describing somebody having to abort a baby, being advised to abort a baby in the 1960s because the baby was intersex.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible. But is it a poem? Is it like short enough that you can read, or is it long?
It's pretty short. I can you know what I can do? I can just hold it up so people can screenshot it if they want. Is that okay?
Yeah,
I could also read it, but I don't know what our time is.
What's it called? From Past Due?
No, it's called 5 Months Vulnerable. Does it fit? I can read it too.
Yep, you can go. I can't quite see it.
Okay.
Can't
Should I
quite
read
see
it?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. It's only one page.
It's
We have
by
the time.
Burley Newton. It's called
We have about 30
Vulnerable.
minutes.
Okay, we're fine then. It's called 5 Months Vulnerable by Burley Newton. Entitlement never entered my mind. I was pregnant, 5 months vulnerable, when a doctor suggested I have an abortion. This is why we do amniocentesis, he said. I was pregnant, 5 months vulnerable, an extra X chromosome in every cell. This is why we do amniocentesis, he said. This fetus will develop breasts in his teens. An extra X chromosome in every cell. No real concept of diversity in 1984. This fetus will develop breasts in his teens. No words pangender or transgender. No real concept of diversity in 1984. A science-based legal procedure, that's all. No words pangender or transgender. No social evidence-based research. Just a science-based legal procedure, that's all. When a doctor suggested I have an abortion. No social evidence-based research. Just entitlement never entered my mind.
Wow. See, that's the kind of thing that gets me, gets my feathers going, I guess. What's the name of that book? I have an intersex friend that is also a activist. Choice words. Okay.
Writers on abortion. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's really powerful because that really sort of sums up apparently what happens.
Yeah. In the 80s and probably still in a lot of places. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't tell you to abort it now, but they definitely don't allow for the person to just stay intersex.
Right. Yeah, they make that decision. Crazy.
Well, they have a choice word for it. When I was carrying my youngest, they said her head was too big, that she probably had Down syndrome and all this. And then they're like, but we want to do an amniocentesis. And I said, no. And they're like, well, why not? I said, well, if she has Down syndrome, then I guess the universe decides that that's what I have. Well, we can take care of it. We can take care of this problem. I said, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. And turns out my daughter just had a big head.
Oh my gosh.
She just had a big head.
Does she literally just have a big head?
She just had a big head when she was born, and she grew into it. But it just goes to show that they think that they know all the time the answers, and they don't always have the. Now I'm thinking, what if I would have took them up on on the offer? I wouldn't have this beautiful young lady.
Yeah. This medical system is so weird with the. Yeah, that's. I'm really scared to enter it now. Like, I don't want to be flaky. I got vaccinated. I thought that was very sensible, but honestly, it's like.
I agree.
My mom, and I maybe shouldn't say this, but my mom never got mammograms. And then like my friends started telling me when I was in my 40s, get mammograms. And so I went, and oh my God, I had the most horrible experiences, false alarms and all this stuff over nothing. And then they did find this one thing, like decis, which in Europe, they don't do anything. They just watch it. And apparently like 75% of people with breasts, when they die, they have this stuff anyway, decis, like it's an early pre-cancer thing. And so I followed their advice, and I went and I did this like biopsy, and now my balance is messed up because it's like they took away tissue, and my balance is different. Like my body is different. And it turned out that then I went to a holistic doctor because they wanted to like do more stuff. And I was like, fuck, this is ridiculous. I went to a holistic doctor and like totally dealt with it through diet and things like that. I mean,
I had to learn the hard way that not everyone over 40 can be on testosterone because so trans people should know this, gender non-binary people. If you're going to take testosterone, you should know that when you start to approach the menopause time, your body will turn that testosterone into estrogen, and doesn't really help you because your estrogens are dipping because you're transforming into a divine, in my opinion, into an androgyne. And that's kind of how it happens. So just saying. But a natural hormone doctor is the one that was like, I don't think it's a good idea for you to be on testosterone, by the way. And this is why. And he showed me numbers in my test. So I'm just saying that, yeah, definitely, Eve, you're right. Medical professionals seem to forget they're not infallible.
Yeah.
I agree, Eve. And it's a sad thing, and it's a hard thing, especially right now with everything that's going on with the vaccines and stuff. And we have to make our own decisions for our own self, and we also have to weigh in what's worse, the possible side effects of the vaccine or the virus itself. Which one's a bigger threat for you? And I think that's what we all each have to decide. And here we are. So I'm just going to say that I really am moved by that poem, because I really have a strong connection to intersex people, because my gender dysphoria feels like I'm intersex, like I actually have both. And I have some friends that are intersex, and I feel very moved to make sure that their activism is heard in the world. They will be on the show when they're a little less overwhelmed with what's going on in their life. But I'm just going to say that that's really powerful, and that's what poetry does, right? That's what it does, is that it brings these powerful messages that need to be heard, right? It brings it to our ears. Right?
And that poem, I want to point out, that poem is in a form called a pantoum, which is a beautiful form based in the Philippines. And you would have heard that repetition in a very patterned way. And I believe that's one of the reasons it is such a powerful poem, is the form is very exact and disciplined. And before the break, you were saying how you appreciated that compact nature of these 5 directions, that I've been developing this system. And I do feel that one of the reasons it has such a strong structure is because of my decades of experience writing poems in form. So taking different things and putting them into patterns, putting them into symmetry, putting them into harmony, figuring out what feels authentic. And so often in our culture now, I think people are afraid that if something has a pattern or a symmetry or a shape to it, that makes it like suspect or fake, like, things have, but that's nature has patterns and structures. There's these amazing things, like the way, there's a beautiful book called, what's it called? It'll come to me. A wonderful book published by Shambhala Press in the 80s called, anyway, it's about the sacred proportion that we find in the Parthenon in Greece was built according to this proportion, called the golden ratio. It's also found in the sonnet, the shape of the sonnet, where you have 8 lines and then 6 lines. It's also found in the seashells and the way the spiral is created. It's also found in trees and the way the branches go. It's also found in the proportions of our bodies, like the proportions of our heads. So this is like this golden ratio is found throughout nature. I mean, this sort of thing I find so moving and so beautiful. And as a poet, and also as a witch, I feel that, by participating in these sacred patterns and these harmonies, I am making myself more connected. And this is what as far as I can tell, the healthiest and most ancient sustainable societies also have this sense of, let's get in touch with the harmonies and the patterns and the rhythms and recur and spiral through things, and, just allow things to happen in a way that's tangible, palpably patterned, and makes sense. And I feel that most of us in this culture have been raised without that benefit of that harmony, that beauty, that sense that things are recurring, that things happen in a way that's reassuring and feels good. And it's I think you can look at it as patriarchy and maybe the patriarchal energy being less in touch with the cycles and the patterns and the harmonies and the whole, and being more about the individual, more about the separation and, just the immediate thing. I think that's why we're on the verge of nuclear and climate destruction, because the short-term individualistic thinking as opposed to holistic group or aware of the whole thinking. And also capitalism, you can look at it that way. Capitalism, all about constantly growing and more consuming and just going forward and getting bigger and bigger without that recurrent spiral. So I'm thinking actually about how if you have that linear energy, that might be considered the masculine, just let's keep going and do this, whatever, in my experience, I've been married for 36 years. I love my husband so much, and he's really good at doing things. Like, I'll want something done or need something. He'll be like, yes, he'll just do it really smart, really fast, really well. But then it's like there's this other energy that I'm always saying, because I guess we are pretty binary at this point, between the two of us. I'm always like wanting to go back and around and come back. And I feel like if you put those two energies together, you get a spiral. And, this is the name of my new book. This is my new manuscript. I just sent it to my publisher. So Spiral.
Nice. It's a book?
It's a book of poetry. Yeah, this is, I have many other books of poetry. This is one of my first ones called Calendars. That's available from Tupelo Press. And that's me on the top of Stonehenge when I was 6 years old. That's my mother, my sister, and my brother in 1963. You were allowed to climb on Stonehenge then, or else it was another one near Stonehenge. But then this is another book I did in 2013. This is Spells. This is where I got into the poetry witch thing. And then this is my new book. I just finished it. It took 15 years to write, to finish. 15 years. I actually had it finished 8 years ago. And then I got into this whole thing with the 5 rhythms that I was telling you about, with this will and the mind and the body and the heart and the spirit. And I realized I had to redo the whole book. Like, it was ready to go. It was done. But I was like, oh, caramba, I have to redo the whole book. So I redid it all. And now it's in 5 sections, and each section is in one of those rhythms. So every word, including the titles of the poems, are written in those rhythms. So it literally took me 8 years to take this book and change it into those rhythms again.
Wow.
Make these poems fit in those rhythms. So you see the first rhythm is in the rhythm of fire. Every title, Kettle Cove, Kiss for Shahid Ali, She is Riding the Branch. It's in that rhythm of fire. And the poems are as well. The second one is in the rhythm of air. The you, the lie, my baby fell apart. The third one is in the rhythm of the body. Lost election, spell to heal a house, earth spell, bum bum, bum bum. That's the rhythm of earth. The fourth section is in the rhythm of water. Brave women's amulet, moon for our daughters. This is the women as a political category that it's about women. Women have voices. It's time to believe in. And I use that word women very consciously there as a political category, not necessarily a personal or physical one. Flower that opens me. So those are all in the rhythm of the water. And then the final section in the rhythm of the spirit. So yeah, that is 15 years, but I just sent it off to the publisher like a couple of weeks ago.
Well, did you want to read one of them for us?
Of course, I'd be happy to. Yeah. I was thinking there's 2 things I could do. I have a poem for the Mabon, the fall equinox. I could read that one. That's about leaves. Or I could read you my Spell to Cast a Circle, which is, it's 5 different rhythms. So it's like, I use this often for invocations for a sacred circle because it invokes the directions, but it does that in the rhythm of that direction. So it's, it might be helpful.
I would love to hear that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So it'll basically cast a sacred circle right here, as you all do all the time anyway. Okay. And it has a little direction. Speak aloud once or thrice for each one as you face its direction. So we won't do that. But if we were doing this in a circle, I love that word thrice. I'm bringing it back, like for spells. Let's speak it thrice. So spell to cast a circle. To the south, Move my life, live my spark, spark my fire. Fire my will my dance, dance desire. Move my life, live my spark, spark my fire. Fire my will my dance, dance desire. Move my life, live my spark, spark my fire. Fire my will my dance, dance desire. To the east. Find wings, find wind, move free, move air. Muse, make, weave, spell, sing me aware. To the north. Seed of strength now root and ground me. Rich earth, gratitude surround me. West. Heart of the waves rocking flow in us. Love sweet as water, come grow in us. Center. Come spiral of joy, the beginner. Below and above matrix spinner.
That's beautiful. That's really well done. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It took me like 10 years to write it, even though it's so short. They used to be on tea packages. I had a business where I was selling tea, Spells tea, and I actually first wrote them to go one on each box of tea. So I like that it came out of something physical like tea. But yeah, Matrix was, I'll share one more thought with you from this poem. Matrix spinner. In the end, it says above and below and above matrix spinner. So each one is for the direction, and it also invokes the element, right? So we have the fire, the air, the earth, the water. And then for the spirit, I wanted a word that was an element, a noun, right? Because spirit is a capacity like will, body, mind, heart, spirit. So I couldn't use spirit again to go with earth, air, fire, water. I needed a noun. I didn't want to use chi or kundalini. It's kind of like you, Hollis, when you were saying with your Divine Androgyne book, you didn't want to appropriate the word to spirit from Native American cultures, not being Native American. So you had to invent or find your own word, androgyne. Similar thing, I didn't want to use for that energy, the physical quality that goes with spirit, or the elements, really. I didn't want to use chi or kundalini or prana or mojo or mana or anything from other cultures. And in English, the only ones I could find was really energy, which is used so many ways, and it's sort of an exploitable substance. So I went back and I reclaimed a word from pop culture. If you Google Matrix, you'll find those movies that I haven't even seen, but I just found that word matrix because it means the space, the energy from which life and forms arise, which to me is spirit. It's also etymologically related. The history of the word in the Indo-European language, it goes related very closely to the word meter and the word magic and the word mother, which is a goddessy word for me. And that's what really floats my boat is goddess stuff. So matrix for me, it had it all. It had magic, mother, literally in the etymology of the word. So some people advise me, well, don't use that word because of the movie, but I just hope my use of it is going to outlast the movie, and that it might be useful for other pagans, other people who want a word for spirit, that for the element that comes with spirit, the element that spirit feels, that spirit speaks through and with, and is sensitive to. So I offer that word matrix to the pagan community and anyone else for whom it's helpful.
Yeah, I actually, when you say Matrix, of course, the movie flashes across my head. So when you first said it, I heard Matrix, and I'm not a big movie watcher, so to me it was okay. And then you said spinner, which is actually a nickname for a very well-known pagan. And she is she's a poet,
Which pagan is that? Will you tell me?
Her name is Abigail McBride.
Oh, I already wrote down her name because you mentioned her earlier, I think.
Yeah, you should look her
Yeah,
up.
look,
She
I
just
wrote it down when you mentioned it. I'm going to check her out.
you should definitely know Spinner.
Okay.
That's what they often call her. I don't really know why, but I suspect it's because when she comes out to the fire, if the fire is slow moving or feeling a little drudgy, you know, because we go all night long, she's often known as the high priestess of fire, the goddess of fire. She does a lot of goddess worshiping, so you guys would probably get along really well.
Oh.
And she's a god. She follows the goddess segment, but she also comes in with her poetry and spins the circle.
Oh, awesome.
I don't know if that's why they call her Spinner, but that's what I've always thought.
That's so
I don't know if that's
cool.
true or not. I don't know. I'm going to totally say that it could
I
be
love it.
not
I
true,
love
but
it.
I could see those two things aligning.
I
But
love that.
but if you say that in the American pagan culture, anywhere that there are pagans, they're gonna know who Spinner is.
I can't believe I missed her. Okay, I can't wait to find out about
Yeah,
this. This is wonderful. I will find her. That's really cool. I've got the word weave in my books a lot. The word weave and weaver.
Yeah, so she's, but you know, she would probably think what you're saying is totally cool.
Yeah,
The Matrix, and then what I did in my head was after you said Spinner, I was like, wait a minute, she's not talking about Spinner the person.
Whoa.
She's saying Matrix Spinner, and then I took those two words and thought about them for a minute. What does that mean? And what does that mean to me? And I thought about somebody like me. Actually, that ends up sometimes I end up being a little bit of a pot stirrer. I don't mean to be, but just by me being me, if I am so some of you may be able to identify with this. When I come through as my most authentic self, it doesn't always rub everyone the right way. And sometimes it rubs people the wrong way. And I'm like, oops. You know, so I'm just saying that's what I thought, and mainly, but I guess that's kind of like when you hear a song, right? And it means one thing for you, and then your friend's like, oh, I thought it meant this, and then you hear an interview with the person who wrote it, and it means something totally different to them.
I get that with my poems all the time. People will read them and they'll think it's like some other thing, and I'm like, okay, whatever. It's kind of like having a kid. You gotta let it do its own thing. But
I think one artist, I think Elton John says, you take it for whatever you need it to mean.
Yeah. But is a pot stirrer such a bad thing? It seems like a really good thing to stir the cauldron.
I was thinking it's good because of the senses that it will weed people out.
It does.
No, it will weed people out. And even like I get the same thing, like what Hollis is saying, it's just like when people first meet me, they're like, oh, you're mean, you're so serious, you're so this, you're so that. Yeah, that's your first initial take, but sometimes we got to get past that. And once we get past that, and if you're willing to take that step to get that to know that person better, then I think that's where it's a more beautiful thing, and it makes it a little more intimate, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, like, I appreciate you, Sandy. Sandy's like, I can't imagine you rubbing anyone the wrong way. Sandy, it happens. It definitely happens. And especially narcissists and cult leaders, boy, oh boy, do I trigger them. So usually if I've triggered somebody really badly, I start to go, wait a minute. And then I go, wait a minute. And they're usually a person that you probably don't want to be near anyway. So sometimes I think my ancestors are working in my favor.
Yeah.
Because they protect me. Because I begged and pleaded after leaving a cult the first time. I said, please don't let me do that again. Please do something to shake me, to make me aware that I'm doing that. Please. And I asked my ancestors to protect me, and now I just need to learn to listen. So, Andy, before we only have like about about 10 more minutes or so. But if you had another poem, we could do that. And then I'm going to do a little tarot reading.
Okay. Oh, are you going to do one for me or for the world, for everybody?
For everyone that's watching and listening, either
Awesome.
now or later.
That is wonderful. Okay, well then I should make it a fairly quick poem, right? I have The Crown of Leaves is probably about 3 minutes. Is that too long?
No.
You think? Okay, I'll do I guess I should do that because it's because it's almost Mabon time. Of course, people may be watching this at any time. So I will do it though, because here we are. A Crown of Leaves for Mabon. September 21st, autumn equinox. Our voices press from us and twine around the year's fermenting wine. Yellow fall roars over the ground, loud in the leafy sun that pours liquid through doors. Yellow the leaves twist down as the winding of the vine pulls our curling voices. Glowing in wind and change, the orange leaf tells how one more season will alter and range, working the strange colors of clamor and bells. In the winding of the vine, our voices press out from us to twine. When autumn gathers, the tree that the leaves sang reddens dark slowly, then suddenly free, turns like a key, opening air where they hang. And the winding of the vine makes our voices turn and wind with the year's fermented wine. One of the hanging leaves, deeply maroon, tightens its final hold, receives, finally weaves through, and is covered soon in the winding of the vine. Holding past summer's hold, open and strong, one of the leaves in the crown is gold, set in the cold where the old seasons belong. Here is my crown of winding vine, of leaves that dropped, that fingers twined. Another crown to yield and shine with a year's fermented wine. Happy Mabon.
Thank you. You know, Mabon was my favorite holiday for a really long time, especially in my 20s and 30s when I was a baby witch.
Oh, well, that's so wonderful. You know, I actually have this book I'm doing about witchcraft, and I came up with a different name for it because Mabon is, you know, I still call this Mabon. I should probably change it, but because, you know, it's based on some Celtic god who like released animals or something. And I don't know. And a friend of mine was having a really hard time understanding Mabon and relating to it. So I really thought about it a lot. And I changed it to the name Moneta, which is the goddess that money comes from. And I actually have a ritual for it that I invented. And to me now it's even more meaningful, which is you make like a big altar, like in the middle of September, you know, a few weeks before Mabon. And you can put on it things from the year, like things that are like your harvest of the year, all the things that have been significant in the year. And it could be good or bad things, like things you've done, things you've achieved, pictures, people you've known, just stuff that signifies the things from the year that you're harvesting, good and bad. And then you do this process of like coming through, living with it for a few days, whatever, and then gradually removing certain things from the altar that you really don't want to keep as part of your harvest feast. And you can take those and just kind of, you know, give them to the earth through burying, give them to the fire through burning, give them to the water, however you want to move them along, let them out of your life, and just leave on the altar the things that are really the things you want to move forward, that you are truly grateful for. And you can thank the other things as you let them go for their help. But the things that you truly want to just celebrate from your Harvest Fest, and then you can have those as your Mavon or Moneta altar. So it was about abundance, thinking about abundance in a very empowered way.
I was thinking I'd like to get I'm going to probably get a copy of your book, because it would be really great to integrate some of these poems in rituals that I do online all the time, with a group called the Family of Fire. And just being able to bring, like, I loved your Mabon, your take on Mabon. What really rang to me was the golden leaf, that there's always a golden leaf, because there's always some gold, even in the biggest pile of shit. There's often
is a kind of gold too, right? The compost,
right? And compost is its own form of gold, really. They call, I have worms that eat my vegetables, and what's left over is called black gold. And I use it in my vegetables, and thank God I do, because it's a great pesticide, by the way. And so I'm just saying that, like, that really speaks to me, because I try to say, find the silver lining, or try to find the lesson, or what am I supposed to harvest from this awful situation? And whatever's happening in my life. So I appreciate that. And so the name of your book is Spiral, but we don't know that
this one
be
isn't
published
out yet, but the one I've just started a little press called Poetry Witch Press, and I'm going to be releasing some books that are like small books that might be especially useful for pagans, like just spells and things you can really use, even if you're not into reading lots of poetry, but you like just really functional books. So there's going to be one coming out probably in the next week or two, actually, called Spells for, I think it's going to be called Spells for Active Witches or something like that. So So.
Well, great, Annie. I'm so thankful that you I'm so grateful that you were able to come and be on part of Rainbow Soul. We're running out of time, so I'm going to take the last 2 minutes to do a little reading from the Love is Love deck. This deck is a collaborative deck, and each card is done by a different LGBTQIA artist. And right now, I'm going to pull 3 cards for the past, the present, the future, and apply that to your right now. And I'm going to say that anything that comes through, you can take what you like and leave the rest. Okay, it's probably meant for someone else. And anything that you hear that you're like, wow, that really resonates with me, it was probably meant for you. Okay, and you take it to mean in your life whatever it needs to mean. Right now, this is the past, and it's the Judgment card, which is an interesting card, because there's a lot of judgment comes through in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it can keep us from being able to make connections with people. Sometimes it can help us make good judgment. Like, hopefully you make a judge, to not go with the bad crowd or the bad idea or whatever, right? So sometimes judgment can be a good thing. It's not always a bad thing. And so this card is here to remind us about the things we have judged in the past. We have judged in the past. And if you have some things that you've judged in the past, just be aware that you judged it. That's all. You don't have to decide whether it was a good or bad judgment. You can just be like, I probably judged that person, or I probably judged that situation. I did the best I could in the moment, right? Because we all have to judge things, by the way. It's part of being human. You have to judge if you can eat that fruit, if you can eat that food, if that food is good for you. There's a lot of judgments that happen throughout the course of a day. And this card is about walking away from bad situations. It's the present. A lot of us are feeling this right now in our culture. We're feeling like, that's toxic, man. I got to get away from that. I got to get away from that way of living, that bad habit, those toxic people, whatever it is. And this card is meant to tell you that you have everything you need. See how this person in the image has the bag and they're walking away. And although it's not easy for them to walk away from this clearly toxic situation, they have everything they need. Mm-hmm. So just be aware that you have everything you need. And guess where it's leading you? To a beautiful manifestation. This is a gender variant person. that look even has sacred mark tattoos on their body. And look at them making these beautiful, what are seen as pentacles, which are blessings, and they're also portals to different expressions and different ways of living. That's what the symbol means. And they're making so much of them in the doorway of life, right? So you can see that they're in the doorway and they're creating. And this is manifestation. This is bringing your magic to the world and putting it on display so that other people can go, wow, I really appreciate what you got there. So Annie, your book. So Lacrosse, your show. Hey, Hollis, your book. Whatever it is that you're bringing to the world out there, you people that are listening to this recording, because Spirit knew you were going to listen to this recording and get to this point in the video. So I just want you to know that this is also meant for you. So just keep in mind that things that you judged in the past, whatever they might be, good or bad, it doesn't matter how it came out. Just be aware that you judge some things and that you have everything you need as you step away from any toxic situation. You know what's good for you. Assure you, you know what's good for you. And when you do walk away, you will manifest beautiful things. And that's what this is to remind you about. That not all judgments are bad. You have everything you need. And this is where you're going. So, my friends, I want you to take that home, take it in your heart, really think about it. How does that apply in your life? And I hope you enjoyed this week on Rainbow Soul. And I hope you're here with us every week. And you're right, we're coming up on Maven in a couple of weeks. But next week, we're going to have a lot of artists on here to show us about painting. Mm-hmm. So come join us next week to learn about the sacred art and the sacred painting and how that speaks to our soul and how it comes out in paint. Good night, everyone. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see you. To be here.
Thank you for watching Rainbow Soul, part of the WLFE DB Network. A queer perspective on spirituality beyond religion. We appreciate you sharing the show on your timeline. Follow us on social media of your choice and join our Facebook group, Rainbow Soul. We want to hear from you. Share your topic ideas for Hollis and Lacrosse. Explore upcoming shows and interesting guests. The Rainbow Soul Facebook group, where we build community of questioning seekers. Rainbow Soul, where spirituality is our medicine.
Tune in to Kaleidoscope Eyes with your host, Transman Lacrosse Ortiz. Every week, we will be touching topics within the LGBTQIA+ community. We will also be having interviews with individuals within the community and allies. Journey with us as we share in their struggles and triumphs every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern.